Sarbajeet Nag. I'm a partner in the Milbank Leverage Finance team. I trained at Novery and I went to university in India in the National University of Juridical Sciences in Calcutta. I chose the solicitor route, not barrister, because I grew up studying in India, where the barrister route is quite different to how it works here. And it was, at the time I was studying law, there was based a lot on family connections, based on what contacts you had in the industry, and I was an outsider in that sense. And so for me, the solicitor law firm route seemed to be a much simpler and much more attainable goal. I did my training contract at A&O. I joined there about 14-15 years ago now. It was a really good experience. It was a great place to train. It was a very different experience for me to a lot of other people because I was again coming from India. I didn't know many people here. I came here I think on a Sunday evening and started working on Monday morning. And so, coming from a different background, different education setup, it was a big change. It was change not just in terms of, joining a new place to work, but also a new place to live. But it had great training. It had a lot of different kinds of law you could practice and specialize in. And I was there for about 7 years, so I loved the experience. My area of expertise now is leverage finance. I really fell into it by chance. When I was at A&O as a trainee, you had to pick different seats as one does, and I picked finance as a broad area of specialization, and I happened to get sat with a partner who really worked in leverage finance. I didn't really know what it was. I ended up doing it for my second seat, and then came qualified back there just because I loved the experience. And so I came into it with no background whatsoever, but I love the kind of vibe of the place. I love the kind of deals we did in terms of it's really tangible in what you do. So a lot of the deals we work on are for retail businesses, for businesses we've all heard of, you see in everyday life. And I think the idea of working on something that was really tangible and something real was really exciting for me. The work of a banking and finance solicitor can be different depending on the area of specialization you're in. Fundamentally, it's a transaction area of law. So clearly, it's quite different to contentious law, litigation, or something of that sort, or advisory work. But in terms of what my area of law, which is leverage finance, I think it's a very commercial part of law. Obviously, there's a law that underpins all of it, but really it's about commercial nous, about understanding businesses, understanding markets. It's transactional, it's about getting deals done. It's about having the mindset to be able to tie in the more legal technical aspects with the more commercial aspects and marry them up together and basically advise clients on why the legal bits affect their commercial judgment. The work I do now is obviously very different to when I was a trainee. As with any area of law, the work changes a lot as you grow more senior. I think from a junior solicitor or trainee perspective, you're still working on, you don't have a macro perspective of the deal as much because the deals you work on they're complex, there are lots of documents involved. And trainees and junior solicitors will usually work on one specific area of the deal, and it's kind of much more micro-focused. So you're either running what we call a CP process or a security process or dealing with local counsel, but you don't tend to have as much of a macro view of what's happening on the deal as you would as you get more senior. So I would say it's less process-driven at the more senior level than it was when I was a junior solicitor. It's more about making sure you manage your own work streams and then everyone else take care of their own work streams. But obviously, as you get more senior, at the senior associate or partner level, you start taking more overall responsibility and therefore have a macro view of what's going on. And clearly that needs to be an element of commercial judgment and understanding of what matters to your client. But I would say, the macro and the micro is probably what I say distinguishes the junior solicitor to a kind of senior associate partner role. Getting my training contract probably was the highlight, because it's a weird thing to say because that's where my career began. But actually, in terms of transformational experiences and what kind of transforms your career to what it could have been to what it is right now, that's probably the one thing that transformed my career in a way that I could never have imagined. Because I was studying law in India. I didn't really know what A&O was. I didn't know what training contracts were. I didn't know what the magic circle was. I happened to apply to A&O, really on a whim, and then ended up getting a training contract. And I wouldn't be in this country, let alone in what I do, if it wasn't for that. So that's probably the one. I think what I most enjoy would be the aspect of working in teams. I've always been more driven by the team philosophy than kind of working individually. I played a lot of team sports growing up, and for me, the idea of working together towards a common goal and actually getting along with people you work with is an important part of what I do. So I think transactional law probably appealed to me more than some other parts of law because of that aspect. And as you get more senior, you kind of build a team around you, you mentor people, you have a collective group of people who are kind of working towards a common goal. And the idea of doing that as a team and with a bunch of people that I get along with, I enjoy their company, I enjoy the social aspect of it. So I think the team philosophy is probably what I say what really drives me. What I least enjoy would probably have to be the intensity in terms of what it needs from you on a pretty much, let's call it 24/7 basis. Not that we're in the offices 24/7, but the idea that sometimes the unpredictability of what we do, deals have intense timelines, they can have short fuses, and therefore the idea that you might have to give up other parts of your life to prioritize work at times can be challenging. Obviously, as you get more senior, you get used to it because there are other things that you want from your job that kind of make up for it. But I think it's important for junior lawyers to get their heads around that, as when you're in transaction law, but especially in areas like leverage finance, where you're dealing with dealing with private equity, dealing with investment banks, dealing with credit funds, you work in an intense environment, and sometimes that can be challenging. I think there's a couple of key issues facing the profession. I think probably the most important one is the talent drain. I think maybe 15 or so years ago when I began, working in a big law firm or working in big law, as people call it, it was a very desirable career option, and lots of really smart people wanted to come into that, whether it's finance or whether it's law. But I have a sense, speaking to lots of trainees or VAC scheme students, that maybe that is not as much of a desired goal right now for the younger generation. I think people have a lot more options. So I think being able to incentivize and motivate the really young, bright young people to come into what we do is important, and I have the feeling that maybe it's less so than it was 20 years ago. My specific practice area, especially at the moment, is in a very interesting phase. My practice is connected with everything that we do around us. So it connected to inflation, connected to interest rate highs, connected to supply chain crisis, connected to the war in Ukraine. All of that impacts financial markets and therefore has a direct impact on my work. So I think we're in a bit of a stage right now where the market's really interesting, but there's a lot of headwinds. At the same time, people have a lot of dry powder and cash to invest, and therefore there's tailwinds as well. So we're seeing an interesting kind of tug and pull in the market right now, where people want to do deals, they have cash to invest. At the same time, there are headwinds in the financial markets. And so it's not what it was 5 years ago, where it was easy to get deals done. People had a lot of motivation and the markets were great. I think we're in a bit of a tricky phase right now where people are more concerned about the macro stuff, and that has an impact on my work. And it just means that people become more focused on negotiating docs, more focused on covenant protection, more focused on making sure deals are more balanced in terms of negotiating dynamic, and that makes a lawyer's job much more interesting. It is also challenging because deal flow is slower than what it was 5 years ago, but I think the work fundamentally has got more interesting. So in my area of law, the skills you need, again, as I mentioned earlier, changes over time. I think both the attitude and the aptitude is important, especially for junior lawyers. The attitude because, and as I mentioned earlier, we are working to intense timelines. Sometimes it can be challenging in terms of working in high pressure environments. So being able to have a calm, clear head and being able to perform under pressure is important. And as is the desire to step up and take on more and kind of challenge yourself. The aptitude becomes more important as you get more senior, but obviously understanding the technical aspects of what we do, understand the law that underpins it, understanding the markets and the commercial incentives for our clients, that becomes more important as you get more senior. But I think the combination of the attitude and the aptitude are probably unique kind of both to kind of marry together to be actually really successful going forward. I think advice to budding solicitors would be, try and do different things when you're junior. Try and experience different areas of law, experience, transactional, contentious, maybe even, do a people it somewhere. I think as you get more senior, work becomes more and more focused on one kind of specific area of law. But to be able to pick that, I think you need to experience different kinds of law. But I think the eventual choice needs to be driven by what really interests you and excites you. I've seen people who began with me, or even my juniors, who come into a specific area of law because all they really want is a good job and a stable income. And that only gets you so far, because at the end of 5 or 7 years, you're going to probably get demotivated because you really don't have an interest in what you do. So I think it's important to find the area of law that really interests you intellectually, because that's what sustains you over 15, 20, 35 years. Legal career more generally, I would say, is take time for yourself and try and pace yourself when you're junior. Again, as you get more senior, it becomes harder to balance your hobbies outside of work, or becomes harder to balance your life outside of work because the demands change over time and becomes more intense. I think taking a gap year or taking a qualification leave and doing something really meaningful, I think is important as when you're junior to pace yourself, because if you run really hard at something, at some point you will get burnt out. And it does get more difficult as you get more senior. So I would say to junior lawyers more generally is, if you're smart and hardworking, your career is going to be fine, but take time for yourself when you're junior, because it becomes more difficult as you get more senior. One thing I wish I'd known would probably be the demands on my time outside of work. Not in the sense that I'm, again, as I said, not in the sense that I'm stuck at work the whole time, but I do find, especially in transactional law, that a lot of people, including myself, find it hard to switch off outside of work, because your brain is so wired to thinking about work all the time, because you, again, are working on active deals, intense, you're working with intense clients. And so I think if someone had told me that you're coming into an area of law that, while it's not 24/7, requires you to have the switch flicked on pretty much all the time, I think that would have been good advice. I would probably still pick what I do because I love my job, but I think fundamentally it is different to different areas of law or non-law careers, in that you can leave the office and switch off and then come back the next day and switch on again. I think our job requires us to be mentally switched on much more than what most jobs do, I think.